and good evening and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation podcast live with me, your host Owen. And tonight I am joined by Adam Thornton of Heart and Hand. Adam, how are you doing today? How's your day been?
I'm doing good, thank you. Yeah, it's been quite good. A little bit quiet. I think we were all probably expecting an announcement today from Rangers, but they haven't. They're going to keep us waiting another day or so, I guess. But yeah, doing okay, thanks.
Yeah, good. We're joined by a few people in the live chat already. Fantastically named Ragnar Wolfson. What a cool name that is. If that's his actual name, that is a wicked name. Says, hello everyone, hello Adam. Can't wait to see who's next through the door at Rangers. And then he asks the question, I think, which you've just kind of alluded to there. What's the delay on the Dessers signing? Adam, what do you think? What do you think the hold-up is on the Dessers signing? You know, we kind of, I think, it was kind of rumoured for yesterday, then today. So, what do you think the hold-up is on it?
I'm not sure. I don't know. This nowadays social media engagements, all that sort of stuff. Maybe King's coronation today. Maybe they didn't want to detract from social media, as ridiculous as that sounds. So it could be that. I don't think there's anything to worry about per se on it. I think it seems pretty obvious from the noises that he's here and he's in the process of joining. So yeah, as frustrating as it can be, hopefully we'll get it tied up before the squad fly away.
Absolutely, yeah. We've also got James Carr who says, "Evening, everyone. When will Cifuentes join? Apparently, he played last night for LAFC. Yeah, apparently he played in the LA Derby last night. Apparently, it was over 180,000 or something. I heard earlier watching that game, which is incredible at the LA Coliseum, which I know is huge. Do you know any more on the Cifuentes? Where we're up to with Cifuentes, Adam?
No, I seen something saying the American transfer window didn't open until today, so I know it doesn't necessarily impact players leaving them and joining us, but maybe they were waiting to get a replacement or something, and I'm not sure. This one has dragged on a fair bit. I remember it being rumoured in April time that we were interested. I'm really excited about this one, I have to say. I think he will be very, very good for us if he comes in the door. It maybe feels a little bit more frustrating, this one, on just because it's a January style signing, if that makes sense. You had to wait until the 1st of July to sign a player on a pre-contract if their contract expires in December. And then obviously the complications with transfer windows opening as well. He does seem to be one of their more regular players as well, so they'll probably be playing hardball. But now I think if the contract has been signed in terms of pre-contract, then it's just a bit of a waiting game to try and agree a fee and get him over. So without knowing the ins and outs of it, I would be expecting that we can thrash out a fee and get him in the door in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're 100% right, Adam. It has dragged on, hasn't it? Now this has turned into a proper saga. I mean, we'll touch on Cifuentes in a short bit, and we'll talk about what sort of player he is and what he brings to the club. Andrew Crawford says, "Evening, fellow Bears." Gallant Pioneer asking, "Is this live or pre-recorded?" It's live, Gallant. It's because we did a pre-record the other day. Stuart Henderson as well. Loads of people in the live chat. We'll try to catch up with that as the evening goes on. Any questions for myself or Adam, please obviously get them into the live chat and we'll get our questions up. Adam, just first off started, a question for you, Adam, is how did you get into doing what you do, you know, in terms of working for Heart and Hand and doing all this analysis and obviously writing the book that you wrote? How did that all start? How did you get into doing that?
So I've known David Edgar, who runs Heart and Hand, for a long time, probably pushing 15 years now. And then when Heart and Hand decided to move to the Patreon and sort of go full throttle at it, if you like, he asked if I wanted to come on and join that. I've always been very, very interested in football tactics and the sort of stories behind the game. Obviously reading books like Inverting the Pyramid, which was out a good few years before that. Getting into football, Twitter, from a very early 2008, 2009, getting into it then. Guys like Michael Cox, Jonathan Wilson, posting their articles and devouring whatever they were talking about in a more sort of deeper way, I think, than just match reports and various things. And it just sort of led from there. But it was knowing David that got me into Heart and Hand, and then pretty much everything else that's came from that has came from there. The tactical side of it, again, like I said, was something I was interested in. There wasn't really anything out there, podcast article wise at that point, that was doing that for Rangers, so I thought that'd be a nice little niche to get into on Heart and Hand, and it's kind of grew from there. Ali Bain, who joins me on that show quite a bit, he's a coach out in America. He was in Maine when we first started coaching out there, and he's now moved down to North Carolina or South Carolina, North I think it is. So he does the whole professional side of it, and I'm almost like the sort of layman, if you like, saying what about this and what about that. But I've learned so much from him, and then that sort of gave me the encouragement to go on and do the book. Obviously doing a bit of writing for some of the other websites, Rangers Review, Modern Football, Scouted Football, a couple other ones, gave me that sort of experience to be able to then go and send off a sort of publisher to say, would you like to, I'm thinking about doing this book, is this something that you'd like to get involved in? And thankfully they said yes, and that was the first book. And yeah, it's just kind of snowballed from there, really.
Fantastic stuff. Fantastic. Is there any plans for any more books, any more things to come out?
Yeah, I'm working on one just now. The Gerrard one was a little bit intense, writing it in lockdown with two young kids, and then obviously Gerrard leaving kind of towards the end of me finishing that book. It meant it was a little bit of a stop-start thing. I think I ended up having 3 different sales windows, and it came out almost 6-7 months late. So I'm writing another one just now. I'm writing one on Dick Advocaat at the minute. So that one will be sort of around the similar lines. Looking at the same sort of things, like what the club was like when he came in, the players he brought in, his tactical influences, going back to the 70s in Holland with Rinus Michels, and how that sort of shaped his career. Looking at the squad evolution, how things changed over the 3 or 4 years with Advocaat, obviously quite a lot there, and then sort of picking out the key players, the key tactical moments, the key goals, all that sort of stuff, similar to the Gerrard book, but obviously 20 years earlier with Advocaat. So that's the next thing on the agenda. There'll be a podcast series with that as well. And then other than that, just doing as much as I can when time allows. I've still got a full-time job. And obviously the media stuff with Rangers as well through Heart and Hand, which takes up quite a bit of time. So yeah, that'll do me for now, I think.
Absolutely, that sounds like a very, very busy schedule there, Adam. Like ridiculously busy, and I think a lot of people, who watch pods and things like that, some of them kind of tend to forget. I think a lot of us, we've all got full-time jobs that isn't working in the media, that isn't, writing. And I know there are some guys out there like Derek Clark, Joshua Barry. That is their job, isn't it? That's what they do day in, day out. But guys like you and me, we have a normal job, as normal as any job can be these days, and try and do something. It's tough, isn't it, at times?
It is, yeah. And obviously having a bit more time to do these things would obviously open up more opportunities, I think, for me, in terms of getting maybe more books or writing more articles or even doing more podcasts, etc. But yeah, trying to juggle it all isn't easy. You're sort of competing with people who are doing it full time and trying to get as much of the same information out there as you can. It can be a little bit difficult, yeah. But yeah, it is part time.
Absolutely, yeah, same as me. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, fantastic job you do for Heart and Hand. Anyway, brilliant articles and brilliant pods and things like that. So, in terms of all the stuff that you use and where do you get all your info, your stats, all your stuff from?
So there's a few places. The Rangers Review use a sort of market leading company called StatsBomb. They have been about for a long while, and they have very, very detailed stats and sort of ready to use diagrams and graphics, etc. That's a very, very expensive tool. It can run into several £1,000s a year, but I've been lucky enough to use that on occasion when I've been writing with the Rangers Review. Other than that, the most common one that people will know is Y-Scout, which is a huge platform which has stats for pretty much every league in the world, certainly down to like League 1, League 2 Scotland. There's sort of basic stuff for that, but it has everything that you can imagine. So it's really just been from there, Owen, pulling out that. You sort of get a video package with them as well, where you can watch the clips and start to understand how the players play. So I like to think that spending a bit of time scouting the players in that way, maybe not just watching the YouTube clips, but actually taking the time to maybe go and see how did they do in this type of game, how did they do in that type of game. Watching a couple of the games doesn't always prepare you for how they're going to play for Rangers, because it's such a difficult challenge. I mean, you're for example, Cyril Dessers, for example, coming to Rangers just now. Most people would probably think didn't have a great season last season, but then I think when you start to watch it and you maybe apply context of the team he was playing in and how difficult their challenge was compared to what he's going to face at Rangers, it's like a different sport, near enough. So you can't always get a clear picture, I don't think, from maybe just looking at their goals or watching their goals. Even I try and spend a bit more time, but you can never really tell. But those are the main two things. I think certainly that I've used. There have been a couple others in the past, but those are the main two places that are around just now. There's another really good website called FB Ref, which you might have seen some of the radars that get posted with player stats, etc. That's a really good tool just for going on and, again, maybe similar to Transfermarkt, that can show you some basic stuff like goals and assists, etc. But you can also see some more on there. So that's a really good one.
So there we go. Yeah, so fantastic. I mean, obviously, I think you could look at Transfermarkt. I haven't quite got the funds yet to go into anything bigger than that at this moment in time. It's a long-term project, that one, Adam.
Yeah.
This has been an absolutely manic summer so far, hasn't it? I don't think any of us in living memory can remember anything quite as crazy as this summer in terms of players in, and hopefully a few players going out as well in the next few weeks. But if we sort of look generally at the signings that have been made, Adam, how would you grade the signing so far? Would you, if we went sort of from A+ being the highest to sort of D- being the lowest, where would you put the signings at the moment for Rangers?
I guess as of recording right now, I would probably rank it at maybe around about a B. I think we've done a decent job. I think for the 5th of July, having 5, almost 6 signings in the door, I think is really, really good business. Last year, I don't think we had anyone in until maybe Antonio Cholak, which might have been around about the 7th or the 8th of July. So getting the business done early, it feels like we've got all of the managers' top targets so far. That is what we feel. I can't think of anyone that's maybe been rumoured that we've missed out on. So from that side of it, I think the manager will be very, very happy. Some of the players that we've got in are players who have maybe lost their way a little bit, maybe had an injury, maybe not we're not quite sure on. But ultimately, I think we've done a very, very good job to get 5 players in who I think will contribute quite well this year. So yeah, I would say around about a B just now. But if that changes within the next week to 10 days and we get maybe Dessers, Cifuentes, another centre half, maybe even Danilo in as well, I think we're definitely moving into an excellent window on paper. But the crunch time will be when we get into August and we actually see what the players are like in the competitive games.
Absolutely, I think you're spot on there. I mean, I remember listening to a podcast once. I can't remember which podcast it was. I tend to listen to all of them, and someone said, talked about the stats and talked about players and stats, and said they can have all the greatest stats in the world, but when you come to play in Scotland, it is quite unlike anything else in terms of the way the games against the all. This might sound arrogant, but the all-surrounds shape up. When we're having 70, 80, 90% possession, and that is something you don't get in any other league in Europe. Even in some of the weaker leagues in Europe, like the Eredivisie, for example, or in the Portuguese league. And then they said, like, for instance, the Old Firm as well. There's nothing like the Old Firm game across Europe. You can take El Clasico, the Die Classico in Germany, the Derby of Italy, the Manchester Derby. There's just nothing like it, is it? And I think Scottish football, when it comes to stats, you can kind of throw stats out the window a little bit, maybe, and just it is kind of a completely separate entity to the rest of Europe.
I think it's just really difficult to tell. I think you're right. It's a unique league. There are obviously teams like your Manchester Cities or your Barcelonas who have lots and lots and lots of possession, similar to what we do, but they don't face teams who are as far back, if you like. The sort of the gap there. I mean, Barcelona to one of the teams down the lower ends of their league is not the same as Rangers playing against maybe a promoted team from the Championship. But the disparity there, the technical level is so much higher on both sides that those teams are always going to be able to give a Barcelona or a Man City a little bit of a problem if they sort of switch off. Whereas with us. Even if a team goes 1-0 down, they're still camped in their box, trying to avoid it being a 5 or a 6 or a 7. So I completely agree with you. That's why I think you'll never see me going out on a limb and saying this player is absolutely 100% going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, because everybody's just guessing. Certainly as a fan, you can try and apply some logic to it. You can try and maybe be educated, looking at, again, for example, Dessers. Okay, he did really good with Feyenoord in a sort of similar environment to how we will play, therefore he might do. But ultimately, there's just so many variables. Putting a player into a completely different team, slight nuances in terms of how they play. A lot of it, unfortunately, comes down to luck. So I think the good thing about scouting, or the most important thing about scouting, I think, is to try and minimize those variables as best as you can. But I don't think you can really do that. And I'm sure people listening, yourself, there'll be people players that have joined Rangers that you would have thought on paper this is going to be the best signing ever. And similarly, on the other side, players that you've thought, why are we signing them? They're going to be hopeless, and they actually end up being very, very good. That's where I think the luck comes into it. And you look at a player like Cantwell, sometimes it just fits, and sometimes a player joins and he looks like he's been here for 5 or 10 years, and there's no scouting will tell you that that's going to happen. No scouting will tell you he's going to play and he's going to score 5 goals, get 7 assists when he's not done that in maybe 4 or 5 years of football. It's just impossible to tell. That's where the luck part of it comes in for me.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I remember watching a number of games, even last season, when we weren't at our best, where we went 1-0 up and teams seem to be playing to get beat 1-0, and it's just a complete lack of ambition. I mean, the Dundee United game at Ibrox stands out. The towards the end of the season, where we went 1-0 up, and yet they're still playing with 10 men behind the ball. Even Stephen Fletcher's back defending it. It just is quite unlike anything else, and even in the EPL, where you've got teams like Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, who are way ahead of the teams down the bottom of the league, the other teams will still go to Old Trafford, go to the Etihad, and have a go at them. And I think that's one of the huge differences between obviously English Premier League and obviously Scottish football, isn't it? It's just a massive, massive thing. Now, you talked obviously about Cyril Dessers there. Now, if you look at Rangers social media, and look, I'm as guilty as anybody, and the live chat, I've already kind of mentioned it as well. There's an awful lot of negativity towards him already, isn't there, in terms of expectation? I think based on his time in Italy, and like we've said, I suppose stats can't tell you the whole story, but someone who's watched obviously, you've done stuff, and I've seen stuff on Heart and Hand that you've done on him. What type of player are we getting in Dessers, and what is he actually going to bring to and add to this squad?
So I think he'll score goals. I really do. I think he's always scored goals. He scored a goal every 130 minutes, I think it is, of football, which is basically a game and a half. He is now 28, and he has done that pretty much throughout his career. Yes, last year, not great. However, when you boil it down into actual minutes on the pitch, then his 6 goals look a little bit better. It's not great, but they look a little bit better because you only played half the games. The flip side of that is, why did you only play half the games? And that seems to be a bit of a theme. It was the same with Feyenoord. He wasn't first choice for the first few months. Then he came in and really started scoring. So there's those things that we just don't know about. And that's why I think just looking at games and goals isn't great. If you look at maybe minutes on the pitch versus goals scored, again, it's not ideal, because sometimes he'll come on for 12 minutes in a game and not do anything. Other times he'll score 3 goals within 5 minutes, and it sort of skews it a little bit. So, but on that side, he has scored goals everywhere he's been. Therefore, logically, you think he's going to score goals here again with the volume of chances, etc. You think so. So I would be surprised if he doesn't. But like I said, you can never be 100% sure. But I'd expect him to come in and be that goal scorer. And in terms of the rest of his game, he is mobile. He's not Fashion Sakala in terms of how quick he is or off the ball and things. But he does have a sort of really nice way about him. He takes the ball in back to goal, maybe similar to Morelos, and he's able to spin in a way that he loses his marker, which I think is quite nice. I would class him as intelligent rather than maybe a bit of a battering ram, or maybe someone with pace. I think he's intelligent. He moves well. He certainly knows where the goal is, 100%. So I think if we assume Rangers are continuing to play this sort of 2-man attack with Cantwell behind. I think for me, Dessers is ideal as the sort of focal point, if you like, the sort of modern number 9 who can drop deep, link play with his back to goal, but ultimately will score goals. I think he's got a coolness in front of goal that I really, really like. I think that's what we're getting ultimately. He's been signed, and like you said, expectation, it's always going to be there. He has to deal with that expectation. We all will put that on. Someone who is, regardless if he's 28 or 25 or whatever, someone who's been £4 or £5 million amount of money. I think the expectation is that you have to come in and be the best player in the team or one of the best players in the league. So that expectation is always going to be there, and that's absolutely fair enough.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you kind of touched on there the formation and stuff like that. I'm just going to pick up on that for a minute. Towards the end of the season, Beale seemed to play with that sort of split wide strikers, didn't he? All the time. It wasn't really an out and out 9, one man up top who was there to run the channels, work everything. Do you think that's something he's going to continue this coming season? And is that perhaps a reason why Cholak is not seen as having a future at Rangers?
Yeah, I think it is. I wasn't 100% on it. I wondered if it was maybe him just making the best of the players that he had last season and sort of just trying to get something to see how they worked. But with the signings coming in, I think he absolutely will. I think Sima looks like he'd be an ideal candidate for that sort of partner with Dessers, if you like. Again, similar to maybe what Sakala was with Morelos last year. Sam Lammers, I think, the manager has said he sees him as a number 10. He'll play in there, but obviously he can play a little bit higher up as well. So with those signings and with, I guess, the potential signing of Danilo as someone who could really play all 3 of those roles, to be honest, that's how I see it working. But I think absolutely it'll be fluid enough that we can have maybe Sakala or Tom Lawrence playing off the left and Sima and Sakala playing off the right. Kieran Dowell can play up there as well. There's a lot of flexibility in there. And for me, yeah, Cholak, if we're bringing in, we always think about this in a way that benefits Rangers first, absolutely. But guys like Cholak and Sakala, if they're being told that they're now squad players or backups, they might not want to stay either. They might think, well, I want to go and I'm still of a very good age that I can go and get another contract. I can go and play somewhere that I will be a first choice striker. So we always seem to think about it in the sort of other way, but there's that part of it as well. What does the player want to do? So on the Cholak piece, I don't think it's as simple as he just doesn't fit in. I think if you play in a certain way that suits Cholak's strengths, he's absolutely going to get goals. It's just whether the manager feels like that's the best way to play overall, which I'm not 100% on. But I think in an ideal world, being able to keep someone like Cholak around to maybe score goals in every other game or whatever, I think would be great. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of noises on that one that maybe indicates that he would be looking to move on.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he's been linked with the Bundesliga quite a few times. Bremen, I think one of the prime teams. They are standing on the verge of losing their 2 strikers, Fulkrug and I think the guy's called Dux or something like that. I think they could well be on the move. So yeah, I think there would be a likelihood. And you're right. I think Cholak, in the right system with the right supply, would score 25 easily. I think especially against those lesser teams in Scotland, but. I think with Beale wanting to play this split striker role, it's not sort of thing that he can do. He's not that sort of player. So I think, Beale is going to want to play that shape. That's seems to be his formation, seems to be his the way he wants to work now. You mentioned Sam Lammers there as terms of playing in that number 10 role, but I suppose that's kind of a thing as well. A lot of people expect Cantwell to play there. How do you fit Lammers and Cantwell into the same team?
Yeah, this is the interesting part because it then starts to become a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. I think we're so used to having a best team. I mean, you could argue we probably didn't have it this year and last year in terms of an undisputed first 11 or even a first 13 or 14, which we have had in the years before that. So I think we're almost conditioned to that, to think who's going to be the best 11, like who's going to play every single week, and it just doesn't happen. Injuries, suspensions, players going off the boil, other players coming in. It's going to be approaching 20 players that get 30 starts in the season. So if you ask the manager, that's his response will be that sort of politician's answer of there's going to be more games for everyone. If you're asking me specifically, I wouldn't be so keen to move Cantwell from that position that he was playing towards the end of the season, that number 10 role. I like that. I think he did very, very well in there. But I wouldn't be a huge fan of someone with Lammer's goal record. And again, I'm being a little bit hypocritical there. Someone with the record that he's had so far, if he comes in and he isn't scoring, we don't think he's going to get 15, 20 goals in the season, then that's not enough firepower for me there, because I don't think we can really rely on Cantwell. I know that he put some terrific numbers up in terms of goals and assists, but history suggests that he probably won't go on and do that every single year. So I think we probably need another player in that front line, whether that's Sima. I think absolutely he can chip in with Sakala level goals, or whether it's Danilo coming in as well to sort of partner Dessers or play instead of Dessers. I like that mix there. So it does start to become a little bit of a jigsaw. Ideally, I guess, in games where we're going to have a lot of the ball, you maybe have Dessers and Sima up top with Lammers in the 10, and then maybe Cantwell behind them. But then you start to get problems further back as well, because Raskin will play. I think one of Jack and Lundstrom will always play, but then you've maybe got Cifuentes and Dowell, and a couple others, Tom Lawrence when he comes back, Hadji, etc. That might be pushing for a spot in there. So it becomes really difficult to say. But I think mostly Lammers would probably want to be playing as either that sort of second striker or in the number 10. It's whether or not we see that, or whether the manager has other plans. We just don't know.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's going to. But I think one thing, the way you were talking there, Adam, you were talking about obviously all those players. It's nice though that this season it really looks like we've actually got options. Really got like a huge range of different weapons, different options, different strategies we can use, different flexible approaches we can take. And I think one thing that was so frustrating, especially towards the end of last season for me, was the fact that there just was nothing else. What we had on the pitch, that was pretty much it. And there was a plan A, because there was nobody you could bring on. I mean, yeah, Hadji was coming back from injury. You had Cholak coming back from injury, but there was no other approaches you could use. And I think it's going to be nice this season to have all those different weapons, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was the big thing about the 55 season, was we had a lot of players there. There were quite few injuries, and a lot of players were in form. But we spent a bit of time with various players being good for various parts of the season. I think we kicked off, and Ryan Kent and Arfield and Hadji were chipping in with some numbers. Then Kamar Roof and Cedric Itten got a couple of really crucial goals in the December, November time. Morelos came in January, February, March and scored a few really, really crucial goals. Defoe chipping in as well. So that squad game, sharing the goals around in that season is ideally what we get back to. And yeah, when you start to think about Lawrence coming back, even if we can get 5 goals, 10 goals out of Roof and keep him fit enough for that to come off the bench, etc., he'll be really, really crucial. He's a player that, probably because he spent so much time injured, he doesn't take as much time to get up to speed as maybe a Yanis Hadji or a Cholak, who you think really are going to need 3 to 5 starting games to really get themselves back in. We've seen the games that Roof came off the bench in the Europa run, or even the semi-final against Aberdeen this year. He just sort of has that knack of just being there. I don't think he's ever been 100% fit, so he's never really bothered about it. So someone like that being able to come off the bench and get a few goals, maybe play that Jermaine Defoe role from the 55 season, I think would be vital. But you're right, the number of options that they're getting in is really, really key. Yeah, it's going to be crucial, hopefully, in a season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on Roof there. I mean, the chance, I don't know. I mean, a lot of us are hoping, I think that hip operation that he's had has actually sorted him out finally. And hopefully we can, even if we can get 60, 70% of games out of him, it would be a huge, huge boost. I mean, because in terms of his finishing ability, he's up there in Scotland as one of the best finishers. In my humble opinion, he is one of the best finishers in our league.
Yeah, no, 100% is. I've been a huge fan of him. I think expectations are quite low. Absolutely. For me, we can talk about waste of money, injuries, etc. But to be the top scorer in the 55 season, I think pays that transfer fee back. Personally, there'll be others that sort of disagree there, but I think that winning that league and paying that transfer back, it's not ideal. We would absolutely have loved him to be so much more and give us so much more. I think a player of his quality would be easily looking at probably getting 100 goals for Rangers, I think, over a 3 or 4 year spell. So that's a bit of a shame on that side. But yeah, I'm sort of the same as you. I think he's fantastic. His movement, just the way that he is as a striker, he's so clever. He's pretty decent in the air. He sort of can score with both feet. He's just very, very clever. And that's a player that I think if we can get, like you said, I mean, 60-70% is probably 40 appearances. If he gets that, I'll be absolutely over the moon, because I don't have any doubt that he would be involved in 15, 20 goals if he is able to get those type of numbers. So that would be really welcome. Whether it's realistic or not, who knows? But you're right, those noises coming out about troublesome injury that has been resolved are maybe similar to what Ryan Jack had. Was it a couple of years ago he was out in the 55 season, and it ended up being something quite serious with his back or his neck or something, I think it was, that had actually been causing problems further down his legs. So if that's similar for Roof, then great. But I'm not sure anybody's going to be holding their breath.
Absolutely, yeah. No, with Roof, you never know. He could go out there in the first game, score a hat trick, or he could go out there in the first game and go down after the first 2 minutes and need to be taken off. Couldn't we? You'll never know with Kamar Roof. And I mean, my dad's a big Leeds fan, and he thought Roof was great when he was at Leeds, but was fed up of him being injured all the time. Yeah. So I think it's something that he's always had there. Now, we've obviously touched on Lammers, we touched on Dessers. There's obviously been lots of links, and Danilo has been one of the big ones now, just in recent times. And Chris Jack reported the other day that move's been put onto the back burner. In terms of centre forwards and strikers and forward-thinking players, do you think it's going to be a case now that we'll have to wait for someone to be moved on before we actually bring somebody else in?
Yeah, I would have thought so. Really, I mean, coming into this window, I was expecting us to make 3 signings in that sort of attacking third, if you like. And we've done that in Sima, Lammers, and Dessers, like we say. Hopefully that's 100% confirmed soon. So I was expecting that. But then it's when you start to think about players leaving that you think maybe someone else would be coming in. I have to be honest, a signing of the quality and finance of Danilo, in addition to all of those, probably isn't something that I was expecting. Anyway, regardless of players leaving, I thought it might have been maybe more of a Josh Maja type. Wages will be pretty good, but he'd be on a Bosman, or maybe even another loan from a high quality team when their sort of European squads and Premier League squads are all sorted out. Maybe we would get someone in like that towards the end of the window. But if Danilo was on the back burner to be looked at once we get someone else in, or maybe once there's negotiations around asking prices, etc., I think that's really, really promising. I guess back burner is an interesting term, Owen, because people see that as we're not interested, when really it could just be, like you said, trying to get our ducks in a row, trying to wait. For example, the money that we're getting for Malik Tillman, maybe that was expected, maybe it was unexpected, who knows? If there's money coming from maybe Scott Wright, for example, if he's going somewhere else, are we just waiting just to see exactly what's happening there? And then there'll be other things as well. For example, Bassey. I know the rumours are there that we might not get much of a sell-on fee there, but you never know. If a bidding war starts up, we might get another £1 million in there, say, for example. You just don't know. And I think that's why it's not a linear process with the transfers. I think they'll probably take it to a point with a few players, see who they actually get in, and then hopefully try and keep them warm, if you like, and say, right, once things change, we'll get someone else in. But I'm a big fan of Danilo. He's a similar profile to Dessers without being the same. I think Danilo has more to his game in terms of his all-round play. I would maybe liken him to Kamar Roof, if you like, maybe a bit quicker than Kamar Roof, just in terms of how he can play a couple of positions. Probably is a number 9, knows where the goal is, but has a little bit more flexibility. So both of them in, with Sima, Sakala, Lammers, Cantwell behind them, I think could be very, very exciting. But even if we didn't get Danilo, I still think the attacking business that we've done is still pretty decent.
Absolutely. I think, in terms of the Danilo thing, like I said, it's the whole back burner thing. I think it is that we do need to move someone on. Because if you look at the attacking department now in terms of forward players, you Cholak, you've got Roof, obviously, the Lammers, Dessers, even Sakala, I suppose, could be counted up there, couldn't he? So there is a real depth there. And a 6th centre forward, a 6th player who can play up front, I think with Beale talking about wanting a smaller squad this coming season as well, I think it is going to be a case of waiting to sell one of Cholak, or even Sakala might go out. I don't know, in terms of who's interested in him particularly, but it could be a situation that has to obviously happen. Now, one obviously interesting thing which I've got to ask about, obviously, is a big story at the moment, is the whole Saudi thing. Now, the Saudi thing, that the Saudis have got all this money now, and they're on this charge to become this next great league with all this money they're throwing around. And obviously, Steven Gerrard has just been appointed manager of, I'm going to absolutely massacre this name, Adam, El Ettifaq, I think it is. I haven't got a clue. It's probably pronounced completely different to that. But there's been obviously the links with Scott Wright, and in recent times, obviously, with James Tavernier. Do you think there's any truth in that? Could we see Scott Wright and maybe even Tav heading over to Saudi to join up with our former manager?
I honestly have no idea. I think that's just a really, really difficult one to call. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, would I have seen Jota going over there? My answer would have been no anyway. And the amount of money, I would have thought there's absolutely no chance of that as well. I feel like it's just such a disruptive market that it's really, really difficult to tell exactly what's going to happen. It's perfectly conceivable, I think, that Steven Gerrard going out there into such an alien culture, and an alien team would want to be bringing players over that he's worked with, he's been successful with, he's had experience with. I think that makes sense. Jota's manager over there is obviously Nuno Santo, who was the manager at Spurs, etc. But he's Portuguese, so he knows Jota. He'll have dealt with him in the past. So that isn't out with the realms of possibility. It's unlikely that Gerrard's going to go for any Aston Villa players, given maybe the success he didn't have there, and also the amount of money that they would cost. So if he's looking for that, and managers always do look to bring some players with them if they can, especially when you're starting from, I guess, the base. They're not one of the bigger clubs in Saudi. So the base that they're starting at in terms of the quality, maybe he could see that as being something quite interesting, and obviously being able to come to Rangers and getting players that would be cheaper. The quality level that we've got would certainly be cheaper than maybe a Premier League signing. So I could see it. Whether you, if you asked me whether I thought James Tavernier and Scott Wright would be the first two, I have to say probably not. Tavernier, yeah, fair enough. He is one of our better players, but he's also getting to that age, so I'd be surprised on that. For me, I think guys like maybe Glenn Kamara or even Borna Barisic or Antonio Cholak would maybe be more sort of like that in terms of candidates, if they feel like they can still go over there and get a bit of money themselves, but also still contribute for a few years. That would have been maybe more what I thought. But it's very, very interesting how that's going to work out. If we can benefit and we can get maybe some of the players that we would like to get rid of, if we can get double the money on them, for example, say a Kamara, if the asking price is 5 million, but someone in Saudi is going to come and pay 10 million, then that benefits Rangers. Fantastic. It's whether the players would want to go as well. So there's that aspect of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of has completely thrown the market this year. Just this sudden out splurge of cash from oil-rich Saudi Arabia, and the fact they can just spend what they want, and it doesn't seem to matter. They're not governed seemingly by financial fair play. They're all state-run. These teams, apparently, I was hearing today. I think it was on Rangers Review I was listening to on the way home from work, and it was just literally talking about the fact that state-run teams. It's an incredible situation, just an incredible situation, and who knows what's going to happen in the future with that league. But in terms of Rangers going forward for next season, are there any other gaps you think that Rangers really do need to address before we open against Kilmarnock on the 4th or 5th? Is it? Yeah, 5th of August.
I think centre back, I think, is one that we haven't covered yet. I think Beale said he would like another player in anyway, there, regardless of whether or not Ben Davies goes or whatever happens there, just because Suter is obviously quite injury prone. Goldson has had a few injuries as well. Leon King maybe still a little bit young to be a sort of starting centre half. So I think that would be the one for me, that we need someone in anyway. If it's Jonathan Panzo, fair enough. That would sort of be one that would be quite interesting to me. I think he would maybe be more likely to be a candidate for rotation in the left back slot, which again opens up maybe the question about, is it Borna Barisic or Ridvan? Is there something that might happen there? I don't know. So I would say someone that's a centre half that can cover left back would be a prime candidate. And then you're sort of getting into, let's try and get some of the players out that we maybe don't think are going to be first picks in the team. We can try and get a bit of cash for. And then once we get further into the window, if anybody comes in for any of our players that are first picks, then obviously they would need to be replaced as well. Maybe guys like Ben Davies, Ridvan, guys like that. I think if bids come in for them, then I think we need to be replacing them on top of everything that we've done.
Absolutely, yeah. I think centre half is a key for me. I think Panzo looks a good player. I actually live in the Coventry area, so I know quite a few Coventry City fans, unfortunately. Okay. And they speak very highly of him. I know there's others perhaps that haven't got as higher opinion, but I know Coventry City fans do speak very highly of him as a player. They like him, and they would be quite happy to have him back. But I've informed them that if Rangers are interested, they've got absolutely zero chance, because obviously we're 10 times the club they are. So yeah, I do like winding them up. It's fun. But I think Panzo, it would be a good acquisition. I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff, Adam, but have you got any strong opinions on Panzo?
I have seen quite a bit of him. I like him. I think he sort of fits the profile, I guess, that Bill's looking for. And there's obviously two profiles I think that he's looking for. One is maybe players who have maybe slightly lost their way or kind of dropped down a little bit, and he can sort of polish them up again. Maybe guys like Cantwell or Sam Lammers. But then his other sort of profile are these academy players that from England that we can pick up, not quite cross-border in the way that we did with Calvin Bassey and Joe Aribo, but players that have been kicking about elite academies down there that we can maybe bring in and get the best out of. So Dujon Sterling, I think, would be a candidate there. And I see Panzo as being very similar on the other side. To be honest, he does have maybe similar attributes to maybe a Calvin Bassey. I'm not sure he's fantastic in the air. So for those of you who don't love Ben Davies in the air, I think Panzo maybe has sort of similar issues there. He is obviously quite a bit younger and can grow into it. He's a bit quicker, I think. He's sort of decent on the ball, positionally a little bit suspect at times. He is prone to the odd brain fart. I know we've all seen that playoff final moment, and I think a few Coventry fans have even said he maybe concentration, etc., would not be ideal as well. So he the money is quite substantial, I guess. If we're talking about a couple of £1 million, you'd maybe be expecting the finished article there. I don't think he is that, but I think he's got bags of potential, and I can see why we would be interested in him. He carries the ball well. His passing is good for a team like Rangers, who are going to have a high percentage of possession. He's a decent tackler. He sort of reads it okay. Like I said, positionally can get caught out a little bit, but he reads the game well. The difference, I guess, is that sort of aerial battle. But coming from the Championship, it's maybe just as physical as up here. You'd like to think he could adapt to it and see where he goes, but he's still very, very young. So yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I wouldn't have thought he'd be coming in as a 100% first pick, but it's one that I think hopefully could be a very shrewd signing for a couple of years.
Absolutely, yeah. I think again a developmental one to polish up. But I think we're fortunate. We've got Connor Goldson, we've got John Suter, who keep the guy fit. He looks fantastic, doesn't he? If he stays fit, he looks a very good quality player. So, and Goldson is a player who I don't really understand the hatred that he gets from some Rangers fans. I don't get it myself. Especially if he takes when he hasn't been in the team, which has thankfully been rarely. But as we saw towards the end of this season, when he wasn't in, the defence seemed to struggle a little bit more. We seem to concede more goals. I think he is a vital piece back there. I mean, I don't know where you stand on Connor Goldson, but do you understand the perhaps hatred's too strong a word, but the criticism he gets from a lot of Rangers fans?
I understand where it comes from, and I think most of it comes from the fact that we haven't won anywhere near enough trophies in the last 5 years. I think that's the be all and end all for a lot of players. A lot of fans will be unwilling to praise or sort of go over the top and praise for players that, in their opinion, haven't performed to the levels. I think that's absolutely fair. I think that there's no doubt that Rangers should have won at least another couple of domestic trophies in that period. And then I think some of these players would be a little bit more fondly remembered. But for me, looking at someone like Connor Goldson, I think he's he's everything that you'd want in a sort of Rangers centre half. More often than not, I think he reads the game well. He's strong in the tackle. Prone to the odd lapse, absolutely, and there's a few games there where it's been inexcusable. But I think over the piece, I think he's been very, very good for Rangers. He's a threat in the opposition box when he can time his jumps, and he's also very, very good on the ball. So I don't have huge concerns about him. I think he's been a very, very good player for Rangers, and I think he comfortably slots into one of the best centre halves that we've had in the last 20 years or so. I don't think there's much debate there. So in that context, I can't really be too harsh. There's been players who have come in for bigger fees that have been much, much worse and given as much less. But like I said, for some people, it's just you haven't won enough trophies. Therefore, I can't say that you're a very, very good player, which is a little bit reductive to me, but I completely get where they're coming from.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the expectation is always there that we win. And so just to finish off, Adam, on our final thoughts here, that what is a realistic for you? What's a realistic expectation for this coming season? Obviously, given the huge changeover in staff, look, I know what everyone wants. Everyone wants a treble and a European run, and that's what everyone wants. But if we do something that it's always hard to do, we have to take our blue goggles off for a minute. What realistically do you think the expectation should be for this coming season?
I think the expectation absolutely needs to be a league and cup. I think as the sort of benchmark, bare minimum, whatever you want to call it, the manager has spoken a lot about effectively spending that last 6 months working out what's happening, getting a feel for the team, spending a bit of time to get the perfect transfer window and get the team absolutely running for the game starting. So that sort of goes two ways. You get a bit of grace for the last few months of last season. There's a bit of grace there that you think, okay, he's not his team, he's building this, he's building that. The signings that are being made, the signings that have been made sort of render that there's no sort of settling in period for the manager. Obviously the players will get one, but there's no settling in period for the manager. We need to hit the ground running. The expectation is there. I would be happy this year if we were able to get a deep run in the Europa League, whether that's getting into the Champions League and finishing third and dropping down and maybe getting through another couple of rounds. I think that would be great. If we go out of the Champions League and we then go through that way, then it's obviously not as good, but I'd be happy with that as well. So for me, I think realistically, knockout football after Christmas in Europe and a cup and the league, I think is realistic. And to be honest, it should be the minimum. I think given the money that's been spent, given the noises coming from the manager about his team and how happy he's going to be, all that sort of stuff, I think that's an expectation they'll probably have within house. That's where they'd want to be.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with you. I think a league, Scottish Cup maybe, I think more so than the League Cup. That kind of makes it a bit better, that League and Cup double. And I personally been greedy. I'd like us to get the Champions League qualification for the money alone, because I think it's, again, we're a club in a position where we do need to increase our revenue streams. So third place in the Champions League and drop down to Europa for a league run, Europa League one, I think would be perfect for me, Adam. Anyway, Adam, thank you so much for coming on the podcast tonight. I know you've got to get off somewhere shortly. Is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to tell anyone about before we head off?
No, I guess if anyone wants to follow me, they can on Twitter at Adamski152. I've created a book account as well, just to try and publicize that a little bit better, so you can get that on at Advocate Book. But other than that, I'm sure most people will be following Heart and Hand on Twitter and YouTube, etc. So that sort of plugs itself. But yeah, if you aren't, then come and join us as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adam. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you to everyone in the live chat as well for your thoughts, comments, and questions. Been brilliant. Like I said, let's make these podcasts worthwhile is having all your thoughts, comments, and questions there as well. Well, guys, obviously we'll be back on a daily basis here on Glasgow Rangers Nation, bringing you daily news and updates. Hopefully, in the next couple of days, the news that Dessers has finally signed. Remember, guys, always need you to do two things for me. Number one, smash that like. And remember, always, we are the people.